Welcome to TGIS 311, Maps and GIS. This is day 6. Students will begin Lab 4 this week. Lab 4 includes most of the skills that have been taught previously in Labs X, 1, 2, and 3. And there's a plethora of new tools that we introduced within Lab 4. The tentative plan for the day in class will be a quick intro, a quick discussion between the directory and the project, interesting maps. We're going to try to run the bonuses, go through Labs 1, 2, and 3 if possible. There'll be several lectures and demos. Not really a lecture, but a demo and a little bit of discussion about it. And then students, of course, will work on Lab 4. You may pause the video to browse what we're revisiting in this lab in the middle column, and also read through some of the new skills and tools. Hopefully, students have prepared using the preparatory materials so that they're ready to complete Lab 4. This is an interesting map from previous quarters, and the link is available if you get the PowerPoint slide deck, ridewithgps.com. It's a trail, or a path, I should say. It's not necessarily all of a trail, but a path from the mountains to the Sound, and it goes over a elevation profile and gives you a bunch of information about the route. And a lot of students thought that was pretty interesting, so I've included it. Another application you may be interested in is All Trails. There is a free 7-day demo, and then it does cost about $36. So be careful that you don't forget to turn it off, or wait until you're going to be using it on a trail, and then be sure to cancel it after if you don't want to pay for the yearly subscription. This map was another map of the day several years ago, actually, when people were talking about the Sonics coming back. And I'd never seen this before, but now it makes sense to me about the division boundaries and the conference boundary. So I got thinking, I wonder if there's a 2024 NCAA football conference map, and I was able to find one. If you follow NCAA football, you know that the conferences had quite a shakeup in the off season. Actually during the season, UCLA and USC left the Pac-12 and caused a whole bunch of other teams to start switching. So here's a decent map. I think you folks by now could create a much better one. You notice that part of the map is actually cut off on this left portion and the top right, and Texas a little bit. That's one thing you should keep an eye out for. Make sure that you don't make these mistakes in our labs. It just looks a little messy. I wanted to discuss Lab 3 directory. The entire directory is in the center. Everything on the bottom is enlarged on the left. Everything on the top is enlarged over on the right. And I don't know if you've taken the time to step back and look at everything that you've accomplished thus far in Lab 3, but you've done quite a bit of work, and you're pretty well skilled now at managing your data. There's a bunch of lab data, and yours is probably a little bit different. You notice this one has a double folder issue. There's a doubling up of data, which is okay. I likely did this as part of a demo to re-extract the data. You've utilized shapefiles here, some geodatabases, and in this case, I just looked up boat ramps. What I would like to suggest is using this diagram. Notice how Park's polygons and Park's points are easy to see. When you're downloading data, I would put everything you download into its own little folder. just like Lab 3 data comes in its own folder, here Parks Points has its own folder, Parks Polygons has its own folder, but Boat Ramps does not. And it would be a lot easier to decipher if I had a folder for Boat Ramps. So that's what I'm trying to get across here. On the right side, you have a geodatabase within your project folder, which is within your directory folder, which is in the GIS 311 Labs folder. Yes, this is from a different year and quarter, but that's okay. These are just my examples. If we were to look at this data in Windows, again, the entire Lab 3 directory is on the right. Windows is in the middle, at least at the top. And remember that Places WA has several different files associated with it. And if we're going to look at the geodatabase, that obviously is much bigger. So down here, I'm looking at the geodatabase in Windows File Explorer. It's very difficult to comprehend, as I'll show on the next slide. In this image, there's the directory, the project default with the house on it, and the default geodatabase. And this is Lab 2 data. There's several files stored within the geodatabase. At this point, I do want to remind you to be careful about where you're saving your files. Many students ended up missing these 4 files, the combination files, when they submitted their zip for Lab 2. Always double check to make sure you know where your data is ending up. So again, this is the geodatabase. If I were to open that in Windows, it would look like this. It's not necessarily the geodatabase, but the data, the raw data of these specific files. And then the geodatabase version has all of these funky looking file names, and there is no way to retrieve a file out of a geodatabase from Windows. It just isn't possible. Moving forward, lab for just a moment. Lab 5, you're going to be extracting a shapefile from your data. And even if you have a shape, even if you're looking at a shapefile data and there's a .shp, I want you to remember that it isn't the entire shapefile. You still need the SBX, the SBN, the PRJ, DBF, CPG to go with this file to actually create a full shapefile. If you were to zip up a shapefile, you would need all of the items that have the same name. Just a glimpse at some of the bonuses from Lab 3. There's some nice north arrows that I wanted to show you, barely just to show you what some of these look like. This would have to be the best north arrow that I've ever seen on a Lab 3. And I appreciate you hopefully getting the garish north arrows out of your system so that moving forward, you can use more appropriate north arrows. This actually, it's not that garish anymore. This is definitely a garish north arrow. Some hints from Labs 1, 2, and 3. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but feel free to pause and read these and ask in class what you can do to fix these or what exactly I'm talking about. But eliminate multiple decimals within your scale bar, 1 and your legend. 2 decibels is plenty in the legend, and in the scale bar, just 1 decimal. Make sure to not have overlapping lines or major large gaps and distracting lines. Try to reserve red for bad things. That's a general rule. Locator maps should not be too dark. Make sure that they're visible. Make sure your north arrow is not too large or too small or squeezed into a spot that doesn't work. Make sure you have enough gap on your legend and text boxes. And we talked about this previously, the border and the background. You can adjust so that it's not right up against the edge. Of course, don't label your legend with the word legend. We all know it's a legend. Reference and resource text should be discrete, lighter in color than pure black, and it should be 6 or 7 size font and the headings in bold. And I have an example of that on an upcoming slide. Try to choose symbols appropriate for the phenomena being symbolized. Reserve pastel colors for Easter or spring specific maps. See documentation on how to make a map look better by just changing a few small items. You've downloaded several cartography or cartographic hint sheets and information about how to create a decent map, and be sure to browse through those when you're creating your final map for every lab. Take advantage of the entire mapping space. Use a neat line if it will help you with your layout, and most of the time it does. It'll help you pull everything together. Try to make sure your margins are equal and using the lab compilation, and that will be a demo in class this week, or in the week that we're completing this, week 6. Some examples from previous work, starting with the scale bar. 2 decimal points in a scale bar is unacceptable. Please leave it to 1 and try to make it only a half. 0.3, 0.6, those type of things aren't easily visible. It's hard enough to visualize a half a mile, let alone 0.3 of a mile for most people. This image is very small, but if you have the slide deck, you can look at it more closely, either online or in paper. I'm showing the guides that I used for Lab 3, or it was Lab 4. I can't recall. Maybe even Lab 2 or 1. But feel free to use the guides, and actually I encourage you to use the guides to help line everything up. And they're very easy to set from the ruler. Of course, legend, where there's no need to label the legend with the word legend. No underscores are allowed in the legend. That's just tacky. This legend was not anybody's. I created it myself for this example. It may look similar to yours. Some of you may had something similar, but this is all my legend that I created for this example. So I'm not picking on anybody in particular. The font for this reference and resources area, this example is black, and I would encourage you to not use black. I would go down to maybe 80% black or 70%, and which turns into a gray. Another issue we see here is references and resources is not larger, the heading of this text box, and the sections or the characteristic that we're describing is not bold either. Here in the second one, the cartographer is bold, and contact is bold, created, software, etc. And you can do that by using this coding in your text boxes. And I also wanted to mention, once you've created a decent text box, feel free to store that in a TXT document, not Microsoft Word, because that adds special codes to it. I would use a TXT or a note, some sort of note taker that you can copy and paste to recreate this on every lab, and then just change the items that need to be changed. you'll notice by reading this that not much needs to be changed. Your name is always the same. Your email is always the same. The date you can change. The software would be the same. Your data sources will change, and the projected coordinate system will change. But this is a very quick method of just pasting this with the coding, the simple coding, to make a very nice looking references and resources area versus just the basic all one font, all one color, not bolded, etc. Some people in previous labs used a hillshade, and they've inverted the symbology. And based on which symbology you choose, in this case I used a color gradient that was from dark gray to light gray, and when it's inverted it looks like this for me because of the symbology chosen, but sometimes inverted makes it look like this. So you can tell by looking at these two, one is creating sinks, and that is dips in the landscape versus hills as they should be. So just be very cautious to double check your symbology so that you don't have sinks and rather you actually have hills in your hillshade. In this upcoming lab, lab 4, you're going to be creating a data management table for your data. You'll be completing this in lab 4 and beyond for GIS 311 and future courses that you take with me. In which case you start off with the original spatial reference, and you put in all of the data names on one column. That's the file name, the original spatial reference, and then what must be done to get it towards the desired coordinate system. And that's based on A, what the original spatial reference is, and B, what your final projected coordinate system should be. This will vary from lab to lab, of course. And then what new name you're using for the feature class within your geodatabase. Remember, we're using geodatabases now. And again, another reminder, be sure to remember to look to see that you're storing your data in the correct geodatabase, in the correct area, so that your data is always connected. And in this lab, by doing this, you're going to take much more control over your data. Some skills in ArcPro that you'll be doing in this lab, and some new demos that will be done in person. Create a directory and project download, or end your project, and then download your data. There should be a comma there. That should be a refresher. Change the output coordinate system current and scratch workspaces. I'll give you a quick demo on that. You'll be doing that in lab 4 and the rest of the labs that you complete for me in GIS at UW Tacoma. Check the output coordinate system and spatial reference. That will be a new, it should be a refresher, but I'm going to give another quick demo about that. That's in the options area. You're going to be creating a data table. I'm going to show you how to do that in class. Remember to use list by data source to make sure that all of your data is where you expect it to be. And then list by drawing order if you want to sort the layers in your contents. You'll be using a spatial join. Be sure to use the help. You have not yet used a spatial join that I recall. Therefore, I would definitely use the help. You'll be creating a join count and then using multiple color schemes to symbolize the data using 4 or 5 fields. And this is somewhat a refresher aside from the spatial join. Exporting just 3 counties, we've explained before that you can select specific attributes and then export the data. So this is a refresher. So if I just selected 3 counties and exported them, I would get the 3 counties that were highlighted, not the entire layer of counties. You're going to be performing a clip, which is also a refresher. Some more skills. You're going to be joining demographics table to block groups. That's a refresher. I'm going to be taking you through some number formatting to make your data and your resulting maps a little bit more polished. Removing borders. This also makes the data look a little bit more polished. So I'll give that demo. I think bookmarks are a repeat, but we'll cover bookmarks again. I might have to give a demo if students don't remember, which is perfectly fine. I'm glad to show you again. You're going to merge 3 school layers. This is a new tool and it's rather easy. I'll give a quick demo. The directions are provided in the lab. You're going to join block groups, Puget region to the school's Puget region very carefully. I'm going to give you a demo for that. Remember which to start with. We always start with the shapefile that we want to attach the data to, and then we grab the table or the shapefile or layer that we're bringing into the current layer. And then the last step of this lab is rather lengthy. So I'll give a little bit of a demo. It's a multi-step process where you select by attributes in actually 2 layers. So I'll type that in, 2 layers. You'll then select by location and then assign values and move on to new selections. That's a multi-step process. As I said, I take you through it once with the directions, and then you're left to complete the rest on your own. And remember, be sure to bring questions to class so that I can answer them. Next class, important info. So this is the following week. This will be week 7. It's imperative that you read the Lab 5 readings and are prepared. Be sure to complete the learning plan. Dress for the weather. You'll be outside for about an hour. Wear sensible shoes for walking and whatever type of weather we get. And some people decide to bring a rain jacket or an umbrella. Read through Lab 5, Part 1. That's important, so you're ready for the day on our class day. And if you'd like, I can encourage everyone actually to install Survey 123 on your personal device. It's free. It's part of Esri, and I think you'll appreciate having that software. On the right, I have some specific help links that you should utilize when completing Lab 5. It would be great if you took a peek at them prior to class time. When we're in the classroom, this is just a reminder. Be sure to sign off and out of the computer, restart the computer, and your name tags, you can bring them up front or leave at your desk, either way. And there is still some candy left to remind you to not make Easter maps. And then this says 9 p.m. That's not the case anymore because we are now hybrid. I'll be here until the last person leaves or 8:35. Although a couple times I have stayed past our due date, our stop time, just to make sure people are doing okay. I could not do so last week, but in spring quarter 2024, I could not 1 week. But for the most part, I will. I'll hang out and help people that want to stay and complete their labs. And that is the end of the online lecture. Of course, there will be a little bit of lecture and definitely some demos and class discussion maps of the day, etc. in class. I look forward to seeing all of you in class. Feel free to email me if you have any questions during the week. I'm happy to help. We can go on Zoom or I can reply via email. Another good spot to work in is the discussion boards. Your classmates may be able to help you. Thank you very much. I will see you in class.